Great. Good afternoon. Welcome, everyone. I'm Dan Powers, the Executive Director of the Society for Science at User Research Facility. Welcome you to today's roundtable discussion. I'm going to be just admitting a few people as they come into the waiting room here, including one of our presenters. We'll give just a minute for some more people to join in, then we'll formally get started. Thank you for making some time today to learn more about the Universal Proposal System and get into a discussion with your questions as you are compelled to do so. Welcome, Paul. Thank you for making time. Good to see you.
Yeah, hi Dan. Sorry, I'm a couple of minutes late. Juggling back-to-back meetings.
Yes.
It's the world we live in, right?
Yes, thank you. Okay. Well, let me make a brief introduction and then I will step back. I'll be letting people in through the waiting room as they join. But we'll start more formally. This presentation will be made available on SURF's YouTube channel, and also we can make this available to any of the attendees just as a link. So if you want to get this information again or otherwise share it, this will be made available. So welcome. Again, I'm Dan Powers, the Executive Director of the Society for Science at User Research Facilities. Just a little background on SURF. SURF is a nonprofit 501c3 whose mission is to provide a consolidated voice and be a unique resources for best practices to those who researchers who are engaged in research at one or more of the nation's federal research laboratories, user facilities. Oh, and I'd ask,
do a quarter-mile lap.
I'll ask if you could, I'm going to mute everyone for a second. And then I'll come back to our speakers and I'll unmute you all. All right. Also, two of our primary realms of activity really involve supporting user facility communities and their research networks by sharing best practices through programs like this. And then we also promote public awareness about the benefits and significance of user research facilities through various advocacy efforts, particularly visits to Capitol Hill and conversations with agency and elected officials. All right, for today, this session is focused on the Universal Proposal System, a configurable shared platform that supports the submission, management, review, and allocation of user scientific proposals. Currently, the UPS is in use at the Advanced Photon Source at Argonne National Lab, the Linac Coherent Light Source at SLAC National Accelerator Laboratory, and it's planned to be used, as we learned more about back at our annual meeting in May, at the National Synchrotron Light Source 2 at Brookhaven. So today's discussion is to build on the presentation that we had in May at the SURF annual meeting, where we heard from Paul Jones, from Connie Vanni, and from Jackie Flood, who will be presenting today. And there are some others who are in the audience today that we know may have additional comments, or this is going to be a presentation, as you'll see, that is intended to be very conversational. So you'll be able to raise your hand and ask questions as we're going along. As just a bit of context before I hand this over to Connie, Paul, and Jackie, Connie is the Assistant User Program Manager at the Advanced Photon Source. Paul is the User Program Coordinator for the LCLS at, and also the, I'm not sure if I say the acronym correct here, Paul, but the MeV-UED facilities at SLAC. And also Jackie Flood. Jackie is the APS Proposal Submission Specialist at the Advanced Photon Source User Office. Let me turn this over to them, and I'll be in sort of the background here, managing the waiting room, and can help out if there's any technical issues for Connie, Paul, and Jackie. But thank you. Connie, I think I'll leave this to you first. And thank you again for making time today for this conversation.
Great. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the opportunity to be able to share more information about UPS. There are three founding facilities, NSLS-II, LCLS, and APS. 2 of those 3 founding facilities are live right now. NSLS-II is working towards being live on the system. Excuse me, we wanted to take this opportunity to kind of open the floor for questions to find out what particular aspects of UPS are folks interested in learning more about, functional, data, how it's being used. We're really open to having, just kind of an easy conversation to find out what you're interested in learning more about in the wake of the presentation that was given in May at the SSURF annual meeting.
And Jackie, do you need, or excuse me, Connie, do you need to share your screen? I'll make sure I have the permissions there for you.
Yeah, I can share the screen, and we can kind of just start poking through the user interface, or the user portal as it's called. If people are curious to kind of just walk through what a proposal submission looks like, I can talk through some of the highlights on that. And then Jackie and Paul would be able to do something similar for the back end or the administrative side of things, kind of give you the 5-cent tour on the what the back end of the system looks like, where more of the meat and potatoes happen. So just depends on what folks are interested in seeing.
Is there a particular first overview, say a set of slides or information that you would like to provide, just to set context perhaps for people who aren't as familiar with the UPS?
I don't think we have any slides queued up.
Okay.
I know the SSURF slides are available
Yes.
from the annual meeting. We can just go ahead and jump into a quick walkthrough and then just take questions as they come up if folks would be interested in that.
Yep, I think that sounds good. I'm going to share, everyone, a link to the presentation slides from May if you aren't familiar with the UPS really at all, or you weren't at the meeting, to jump right into this conversation as Connie's describes. So,
am I authorized to share?
yes.
Okay, let's give this a try. All right, you should all see my very messy desktop right now.
There we are. Yep, you're on.
All right. So I had logged into Dev earlier. Let me just grab a link here. Apologies. So I can show you what the landing page looks like for the nope, that is not what I wanted. All right, we're gonna pivot here. So UPS, Universal Proposal System, is built on a ServiceNow platform. Let me minimize this. Users authenticate into the system using ORCID IDs. The first time you authenticate into UPS, the system requires you to provide responses to questions in your user profile. User profile is accessed right here. Currently, you have the ability to upload a photo. Fields that we're collecting include some demographic information, employment level information. In response to new requirements related to demographics that are coming out of DOE, we've recently added the fields to ask questions for users about disability. So this is sort of a new format for the user profile. And I'm just going to fill in these required questions. You will notice that all of the demographic related questions all offer or prefer not to say, so you are not required to give any information that you are not comfortable sharing. So once you've provided those required responses related to demographics, the system will then let you move into the main body of the system, and it'll take you to your user dashboard. So this would be where when a user logs in a second or additional time, you're going to come to your dashboard. You get kind of a glance at your base profile information here. There's an announcement section that the participating facilities have the ability to put in customized information. Is the size okay on this? Should I try and zoom in a little bit? How's that? A little bit better?
That looks good, Connie.
I don't know if anyone's as myopic as I am. I'm pretty bad. So on this dashboard page, we have this announcement section as mentioned, and you can customize the view. Right now, based on the tiles that I have highlighted, I'm going to see my proposals from SLAC and Argonne. I don't have any test proposals in right now for LCLS, but I could just as easily say, nope, show me my my proposals from Brookhaven and LCLS. So it's a way for a user to be able to drill down and look at just the proposal information that they're looking for based on facility. In this dashboard proposal section, you have the ability to build in, each facility can choose what customizable or configurable links you want your user community to see. So at APS, we have a link to our feature beamlines page. We've got probably a link to the beamline directory, contact info, and each facility can choose what they want to offer in terms of those useful links that can take users back to facility main pages. If you'll notice, the proposals are organized according to tabs: active, draft, and archived. So you can get back into older proposals to look at previous work that you've proposed. And when you're looking at your active proposals, you can check the status on it, see the score. All of these columns are sortable. So you can sort by proposal number or title, or who the PI is on your proposal. Lots of navigation to do in there. And then if you click on this blue down arrow, what this will pop open for you is a view of the experiment time requests. And these are the chunks of information in your proposal where you're saying, I want to go to this resource or this beamline, use this instrument, do this technique, and you can drill down and view that information at will on any of your proposals. You'll notice that the system has additional sections. The dashboard happens to be the one that we're directing users to as their starting point, but we also have a proposal calls page, which we'll visit in just a second. Knowledge base is something that's offered in UPS. It is completely searchable. If I put in the term general user, it's going to go through and look for all of the articles or tip sheets. We can even upload videos in here where you can drill down and look for information, based on keywords. And then you can also filter if you want to look at general user related documents for a specific facility. You can filter that way as well. There's contacts. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Connie, I was just going to ask before you moved on further, if we could just ask if anybody had any questions based on that first couple screens that you were showing. I know we were building off of that presentation from the May meeting, so that maybe some basic background, but wanted to give people that chance. I know you were all automatically muted when you joined in, so if you're not able to unmute yourself, just let me know. You could use that raised hand button or wave like this, and I'll watch for you.
Yep, thanks, Dan. I can't see anybody raising their hand, so I appreciate the interference there. Run interference for me all you want. Thanks.
All right.
Any questions right now, or?
I don't see any, and I don't see coming in the chat. Thank you. Paul also prompted people in the chat that way.
I do have one, just and it's kind of technical. That I see this is provided on the ServiceNow platform. Is that being heavily used at the labs, or is it selected for this and there's not broad adoption? Kind of trying to understand what it would take to get into the ServiceNow contract, and if it's already like, well, we're using it as a site license, that's why we selected it, versus an organization that doesn't use ServiceNow yet.
So I can answer for Argonne. Argonne does use ServiceNow, but the UPS is a standalone instance, so it is not. It's not under the umbrella, of another instance that is already extant at Argonne. And I will ask Lisa Miller and Paul or Leilani to respond for their facilities.
Thank you.
Yeah, Connie, I can chime in a little bit more. So yeah, there were a couple of reasons why we went down this path. I mean, ServiceNow as a platform is used across the labs that the light sources are based at. And I think there is, or at least there has been in the past, a sort of a complex wide contract between the labs and ServiceNow to get a level of negotiated pricing that exists across all of our ServiceNow instances. I know that since we started this project, that model has changed a little bit, so I don't know exactly what the status in terms of licensing and contracting is. But yeah, as Connie said, this was set up as its own separate instance of ServiceNow. And that was for a combination of reasons, both from a sort of practical perspective of allowing us all to have access to an instance of ServiceNow that isn't too deeply embedded within all the other systems that any one lab uses. But also as a way of kind of isolating this from our other systems to be able to give people, different levels of admin privileges in this system that wouldn't conflict with any of the privileges they have in their home systems.
Thanks, that's helpful.
I can just add that Brookhaven doesn't have, we have almost zero ServiceNow presence, and it doesn't impact us using UPS. So if other facilities are interested in UPS, I wouldn't view, having no ServiceNow or little ServiceNow presence a barrier to doing it, because it is a standalone application.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a great point, Lisa.
Thank you. All right, so I'm gonna shuffle along here real quick. We have a contacts page, pretty standard stuff for a website. Here's a way to get back to your user profile. We're on dev right now, so this is a sort of a residual link back to a former version of our portal. Facility console is a way for persons that have been assigned appropriate roles to get to the back end directly without having to do a second login. And we do have a built-in feedback so that any user can let us know if something's not working or provide an improvement idea for us. And those go directly into an Agile platform that is built in. And I'm going to try and pick up my speed here a little bit so that Jackie and Paul can show you guys that. And then tours is kind of a cool feature of ServiceNow. You can build in tours. This page doesn't have any. I believe the dashboard page might have a tour. And if you wanted to, just as a way to kind of walk your users through with some additional information without having to be there, you can they can opt to launch a tour, and it basically just walks them like through 1 to 7 little windows where it sort of spells out the things we were just talking about as we were looking at the dashboard. So I'm going to stop here just to find out if the audience is more interested in in back-end stuff? Do you want to see a test, proposal submission? We can run through that. But I defer to the audience to find out where they'd like to go. I'm sure Paul and Jackie would be glad to show you more of the administrative stuff.
So there's a question from Krista. I'll just read it out so we can field it. She says, I wasn't at SURF, so maybe this was discussed, but I'm interested in learning more about the process for a new user facility beginning to use the UPS.
Okay, great. Thank you for that question. So we are in the company that has built out the universal proposal system for us is CRI Advantage. And Lisa Escalante, who's been the project manager for the UPS build, has been working with CRI Advantage to develop an onboarding process. So we are in the process right now of kind of building out the steps, what the requirements would be, some estimated costs. I think a big part of the onboarding is governance. The SMEs that have worked on developing the system have established a governance document that's currently being reviewed by all of our individual laboratory legal and procurement people, just to make sure that the content is on point and aligns with laboratory and facility needs. So there is a lot of active work going on right now in terms of onboarding. And I believe that once we've all collated the feedback from our legal procurement and gotten the kind of the build out steps from CRI finalized, we'll have something that we'll be able to share broadly with people that are interested.
And Paul, I see your hand is up there. Plus there was another comment from Krista we can get to.
Yeah, I just wanted to sort of add a note on that governance point, because I think that is becoming something that we are more and more sort of aware of the need to refine and sort of beef up. But what we're trying to do is get to that point where there is a very clearly established set of ground rules for how we operate as a collaborative. We sort of had that initially when we started this project with an MOU signed between the three labs to actually get the project started and do the work to build the application. But I think what we're realizing now is that there's sort of another level of that goes beyond the initial development to sort of how we make sure that we're working in a cooperative way, that we're collaborating on all the things we need to do, and also that we've got kind of the mechanisms in place so that if there's any issues, if there's any problems with the way the application gets built, that we can kind of get all the stakeholders to the table to make sure that we fix those before they become serious problems. So formalizing that protocol is probably more complicated than we ever thought. But I think it's really important that we get some ground rules in place so that we've got a mechanism that everyone knows they're playing by the same rules, basically. And what we don't want to end up in is a situation where, because we got there first, we get some special treatment compared to any other stakeholders.
Thank you, Paul. And Connie, I'll bring up the second question that Krista had. Someone building on perhaps the themes Paul's alluding to there. She's also interested in how much configuration each user facility can do versus having ServiceNow do the configuration for them. Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, probably not. Probably not going to be as eloquent as somebody from CRI would be. When we were designing this system, we really tried to keep a broad awareness that although the three founding facilities are light sources, we fully expect that there are going to be possibly computing facilities, nano centers, other kinds of user facilities joining. So the workflow, when you look at it on kind of a high level, and Paul might be a better person to address this, really we are taking in sort of foundational information about your scientific proposal. And the structure is like there are forms that are global or universal. And then there are surveys which are more facility specific. So we really worked hard to choose fields, form fields, things that are global and universal that are really applicable to any kind of scientific proposal, whether it's asking for time on a supercomputer or to use a tool at a nano center. But we are all different, and even all the light sources are different. So the way the system is built out is you can facility by facility and even down to the level of proposal type or just by call, you can build out what are called surveys, and they are endlessly configurable. There's a huge variety of question formats that you can apply, and you can have those surveys triggered, as I said, based on the proposal type or based on the call, and they are facility specific. So if you really need to ask your users detailed questions about whether it's about safety or about sample handling or any topic, you can build out a survey and choose to have that survey triggered so that you are getting the information that you need from your users. It may be completely different from another facility.
And just to be clear,
Mhm.
sorry, to clarify my
Mhm.
question, maybe the user facilities can build that out themselves. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Surveys
Okay.
can be built out by admins at each facility.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Connie, maybe if I can just add a note on that as well, because if this is a really important point. I think we've tried to make sure that the facility admins have as much control over their process and over their content as possible. But there's also, obviously there's not necessarily ServiceNow expertise within the staff at every facility. So if you don't have those resources locally, we're leveraging the kind of core functionality within ServiceNow, within the CSM module, basically to build a lot of these workflows.
Mhm.
So if you have access to a ServiceNow developer, they should have a pretty short learning curve to get up to the point where they can do that configuration for you, if you don't have the expertise in-house.
I mean, I am certainly not a computer person, and I could log into the system and build out a survey anytime. It's almost like a WYSIWYG kind of thing.
All right. Thank you. There is another hand raised, Soleimane. I see you have your hand raised. Do you have a question?
Yeah, sure, Dan. Thank you so much. I am new to this. So I'm a program officer at the National Science Foundation, and we do manage facilities, user facilities, and we have in particular, we have a synchrotron facility at Cornell. So my question is really whether this universal proposal system is limited to DOE facilities or is open to all other facilities, and if so, I guess it goes. You follow the question that was asked earlier, sort of how do facility take advantage of that if it's not restricted?
Yeah, that's one of the that was one of the sort of foundational questions that we presented to our various legal departments. I don't want to misspeak here. I do not believe that there would be any limitation placed on joining UPS in terms of I'm a DOE facility or I'm not a DOE facility. And again, we're working on that onboarding process, and we'll have much more detail available shortly. But at this time, we don't. And you guys correct me if I'm wrong. We do not envision any restrictions that would limit participation to just DOE user facilities.
Yeah, Connie, I would just tag on to that. I think, definitely the very short answer is we don't know. But the sort of, in principle, we didn't intend for this system to be a closed shop where, people outside of our little network weren't able to join. I think we've probably got some contractual challenges because we're, as individual DOE labs, we have our own contracts with ServiceNow, and then, this instance in itself is a standalone instance, which is actually currently being managed by Argonne, And then so underneath that contract, we've got these separate MOUs with the different labs that are stakeholders within it. There's probably a much more elegant way of structuring it than what we have. And at some point in the future, we might have to like transition those contracts across to be something a little bit more neat and tidy. You know, for example, if UPS was some sort of standalone entity, we could all be stakeholders in that entity, and then that entity would own the contracts rather than it having to sort of live under this DOE lab contract. But
so Paul, if I may just add, thank you for that. I think the benefit I see, particularly on the user side, is that user move around. They go where they can do the experiment, and whether it's a DOE or so long as it's a national user facility, I see some benefit of making it available to all the facilities because users are the same users, right? For that reason. But I understand the challenges. Maybe some discussion needed to clarify things, but yeah, something to think about.
Yeah, I think 2020 hindsight, I would have probably got the lawyers involved right at the start and tried to come up with a better way of establishing that initial contract. But I don't know that any of us knew what the future plan was at that point. So, you know, we didn't have necessarily any sort of remit to make this a sort of open shop that anyone could jump into. We just knew that that was, you know, a potential benefit of having a shared system.
Connie and Paul, I have a couple questions, and Tim, I see your hands raised, but let me get to these couple questions that came in on the chat first. First from Ed, he's asking is there a web API for internal systems to collect data from approved proposals? And then Christine, I'll get to your question about LaserNet.
So at this time, again, I'm not a technical person. The participating facilities, we have all implemented APIs that are connecting data within the UPS system to other platforms and data tables at our home institutions. So for APS, UPS is talking directly to our scheduling system. It's talking to our safety interface. Does that address the question?
I'll wait to see if Ed replies with a follow-up there.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, based on the screen that we're looking at right now, Christine was asking about if LaserNet US is getting added, seeing it on the screen, but they weren't mentioned as a current partner. And her question is, what lessons are being learned from adding a partner that wasn't part of the original facilities? Seems to get to somewhat what Solomon had just brought up too, like how can this integration happen?
Yeah, so I can clarify the status of things with LaserNet US. So the LaserNet US proposal process is currently administered by LCLS, which is why it's part of the network already. Basically, the LCLS, LaserNet US, and MeV-UED are all, from an administrative perspective, run as one facility. Although obviously they're very separate programs. But I mean, the short answer to Christina's question is that we are expecting to start doing LaserNet US proposal calls through UPS. Exactly when is still up in the air, but you know, if not the next cycle, probably the cycle after that.
Yeah. And again, just a reminder, we're looking at the dev site. So this is where we do a lot of our testing. There just aren't any testing calls built out for LaserNet US, which is why you're seeing the no active proposal calls message.
All right, thank you. Tim, you have your hand raised, and then Ming Cheng, I'll grab your question.
I do. Some of the questions I had have already been answered. Thank you for the great questions that have been asked here. So I work with Chickasaw Management Services. We actually administer a program for NNSA called ZNet US, which is based upon LaserNet, very closely based upon LaserNet, and we have conferred with LaserNet staff on a variety of occasions for guidance and their experience and things. So we do a series of peer reviews for NNSA, and then we have 4 or 5 different user facilities that are utilized for ongoing research by PIs selected through the peer review process. And the NNSA customer and I met with Paul on one occasion. Thanks, Paul, for your time. That was very, very helpful. The one question I do have, who is the primary contact for us to come to? Because we would have some interest in, I think, future use of this system, and even somehow aligning ourselves within a partnership like the LaserNet question that was just asked as well. But is there a primary contact that I can go to if I have questions on this? Would that be you, Constant?
It would be any of us on the contacts page, truly. Jackie and Paul are, I would say, probably our strongest SMEs on the sort of the back end, the administrative, the more agile process. You know how we're triaging and building out enhancements and defects things. If you have questions more about the front end, you know, like what is the user experience like? I'm not half bad at showing, you know, the tire kicking on that. But really any of us, you know, we haven't identified a like a primary UPS contact. This is a very interesting concept.
Okay, we're still in demo mode on ZNet, but we fully expect for it to progress because we've had some really encouraging beginnings with it. So we're going to look for more long-term situations and arrangements for the program as this progresses. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, Tim, I'll just quickly follow up and issue a public apology for not getting back to your emails faster. But I think one of the things that's been holding me back is this whole governance component, because we're still trying to make sure that we've kind of dotted the I's and crossed the T's in terms of understanding what we can and can't do from a sort of sharing perspective formally, but also what the process will be to onboard new stakeholders, which I think we know everyone is interested in. We know we need to refine that process, but we need to make sure we have some ground rules in place to get the ball rolling on that.
No apology necessary. We understand the situation you're in. We are also greatly appreciative of any bit of your time we can get, because I know how busy you are. So, and we do look forward to hearing from you. So,
I can't wait to have more facilities using this system, but I'm just I know we're very wary of trying to run before we can walk, so we're taking it in small steps right now.
Right. Thank you.
Great. I do have a couple of questions then in chat, and then Christina, I saw your hands raised. Mingxing was just asking to reconfirm, where's this shared system located? How would someone even tap into this just to perhaps look around a little more?
So the ServiceNow instance is cloud-based. I would say if you're interested in kind of getting in there and getting that user experience, all you need is an org ID, and you can go to the live UPS site and create your user profile, and walk through, do the tours, look at proposal calls, you know, explore the system that way. If you're more interested in kind of the administrative aspect of things, you can reach out to Paul or Jackie. I know they've both got great depth of experience with the administrative side of things, and I know they'd be glad to sit down and kind of give you the tour of the back end and show you what it looks like. If there's curiosity about more the administrative side of things, Paul or Jackie, by all means, take the screen and kind of walk through the back end of the system, if folks are curious about that.
Yes, let me do a bit of a time check. So it's 20 to 1 now, East Coast. There was a quick question from Miriam on is there a timeline for when the governance document for onboarding will be made available? Then let me go to Christine, who had her hand raised. But Paul and Jackie, if you also had presentations, I want to be sure we actually give you the floor for that. But thank you all for these questions, but we'll just keep the agenda moving that way. Could you address the timeline on the governance document first?
Yeah, so as I said, all three of the labs right now are walking that governance document through their respective legal contacts at their home facilities. So we're going to be, excuse me, collecting feedback that we receive and looking at it, sort of in total finding out what adjustments need to be made, where we need to build out, where we need to strengthen our wording. And we're also having our procurement people look at it just from that sort of financial point of view. So I think it's going to be a little bit dependent on how busy our various legal departments are.
Okay, thank you. And Christine, you had another question.
Hi, thank you. I'm in the same kind of boat as Tim was talking about, because I'm representing BeamNet US. Obviously, LaserNet US's success has spearheaded a lot of Net US's coming out of the works. And so we're in a similar position. I wanted to clarify a little bit of my question about LaserNet US lessons learned. So just, seriously, if you're creating a new thing, you're adding it to it. It sounds to me like the feedback I was just given was that the only issue is governance. Apart from that, how much effort is it roughly to add? Have there been any issues in terms of LaserNet US, like, well, we want to do things in a slightly different way, so it's not been compatible with the system? I'm just sort of trying to understand the level of flexibility that this has to, and a new facility being added once the governance issues are finished and dealt with.
So again, we're kind of back to that structure of the form aspect of the proposal, which is universal. Let's see if I can. So when a call is opened, this you'll notice that the proposal submission process is broken into different sections. This functions both as a navigational and as like a status a visual status cue for you. So just on this page alone, so this proposal submission guidance, this is completely configurable, call to call, facility to facility. You can tell your users whatever you want them to know about this particular proposal call. You can put links in here, you can put images in here. So completely configurable. This thing that we're looking at right here, the proposal part of this is one of those forms. So this is universal. All of us use this same interface. You can attach documents. We have like all those core proposal items, title, type of proposal. This is this is facility specific, like I'm not going to see LaserNet proposal types when I'm a user responding to a proposal call from APS, and NSLS-II would have their proposal types loaded in there. Primary areas of research, these right now are kind of the standard DOE areas of research. Keywords, all of the facilities have contributed. Keywords, this is kind of a smart search sort of thing, and we do have an enhancement in the works to do more sort of grouping and organization on keywords. But for right now, these are this is sort of a global keyword list with an eye towards making it more either facility specific or technique specific in the future. Now I'm saying that, and obviously abstract, PI, co-PI, and co-proposers. Now I'm gonna make myself a little bit of a liar here. We're saying that this is universal and global, but the way the APS workflow works, we have the user identify the review panel that they think is most appropriate for their particular proposal. LCLS and NSLS-II are not US. So even within these sort of global universal forms, there is some configurability that can be had. And if I were to start a proposal, based on whatever I chose for proposal type, once I get to this additional questions, this is where those surveys that I talked about, where you can design the question structure, you can completely configure the questions that you're asking. All of that gets built out here. The experiment time request section, although this is a form, again, it's being driven by you know, facility specific information that is getting launched and associated to the proposal because of the call.
Thanks, that's great to see. I just want to mention that this doesn't look like much work at all, and I just wanted to clarify that that was the case, and so it doesn't seem like it's much more than like a week of work maybe to set up.
Yeah, I mean, the surveys, you can, even I can build out a survey in, you know, 10-15 minutes. That's super easy. You know, we tried to make this sort of information flow that users are providing as universal as possible.
It's almost too good to be true, but thank you very much.
Well, I'll be Debbie Downer then. I'll throw out the sort of the caveat and the warning that the one thing that makes life complicated is whether or not the data structure in UPS is compatible with your existing data structures for downstream systems. And the likelihood is that there will need to be some mapping that isn't completely sort of routine. And what I mean by that is within UPS, we've tried to give you the flexibility to say this data is associated with a proposal and that data is associated with an experiment time request. And we've established that there's sort of a parent-child relationship between a proposal and a time request. And what that means is that, you know, any one proposal can have more than one time request associated with it, if that's the business rule that your facility allows. So if your local systems have a very kind of flat data structure, it would be incredibly easy to do this, right? You could set some very simple rules. There's one proposal, one experiment time request. Everything's a one-to-one relationship, and you've got a very straightforward kind of flat set of data to work with. Most of us don't function exactly like that, and all those little quirks and tweaks around the business rules are where things get a bit more complicated. So I think that's where the complexity lies, is in making sure that you've kind of understood where those edge cases are, and got a strategy to handle if the data doesn't map really simply, how you map those more complex relationships. And even just as an example, the mapping of people data. Right now, our local systems do not have a good way of identifying people by ORCID ID, because historically it hasn't been a required field for our users. So we have a challenge because the data coming across from UPS tells us something about a person. It gives us their, you know, their name, their email address, their ORCID ID, but it doesn't contain any other identifier that necessarily maps to what we already have for that person. So we've had to build some tools, or we're actually still in the process of building tools to better handle that, so that we can make sure that we have a good match. Basically, if someone comes into our system from UPS, we have enough data from our local system to be able to match that person back to the identity in UPS that got passed across when the proposal got submitted. So, like I say, I'm being a bit of a Debbie Downer. I don't want to say it's difficult, it's terrible. It's just that you have to be aware of the fact that it won't necessarily be perfectly simple unless your downstream systems are really sort of straightforward in relation to, basically, if the data structures are identical, it's a piece of cake. But if they're not, you have to be aware of those differences.
Thanks.
And Paul, could I ask if yourself or Jackie, I wasn't sure if you have something more formal or structured that you wanted to present. We only have 10 minutes left and wanted to give you that time for sure.
So I don't have anything specifically to present, but we do.
Okay.
So one of the things we've got that's sort of a work in progress within our instance of ServiceNow, and as Connie alluded to, those knowledge bases, we've built out a knowledge base for system administrators. Basically, we're sort of mapping all the data schemas for all of the tables in the system, and the intention is to make that available to people who are sort of onboarding as new facilities, so that we can kind of give people the information about how the system's structured, how the business rules work, and basically make that part of the sort of the welcome package as people are learning about the system. We're not quite there yet. We don't have that in a place where we can share it. But this is all part of that bigger governance picture. We want to make sure that when people come to us and they're ready to join the network, that we've got the tools to say, okay, here's what you need to know. Here's the information you need to make that decision before you jump in and say, right, we're going to use this, and then get 6 months down the road and realize it doesn't fit your needs.
Okay. Jackie, did you have anything in particular that you wanted to describe, or otherwise have the floor?
I actually, Lisa Escalante is our project manager, and she put a really comprehensive note in a private chat. Connie, when you take a look at that, I think this might help with the onboarding questions. And I don't know if it's best to just put this in the chat for everyone to read or to speak to it, but I think it might give people a really great idea, a better idea of the additional work that would be involved for the onboarding. And that seems to be where a lot of our focus is with the questions coming at us right now.
Great. Oh, thank you, Lisa. And perhaps if you're able to make that transition into the, say, public chat to everyone.
Yeah, I can do, or Lisa E, if you want to speak to this, since you are our fearless leader as the project manager. I don't know. Yes. I don't want to steal anybody's thunder. This was not my.
No, thank you, Jackie. So like Connie said, and Paul and others had said, we are still working through the process, but I did want to give you some insight to what the concept what we're looking at and how we're anticipating the flow to go for onboarding a new facility. And like Paul said earlier, I just want to make sure that you're aware that although it does seem by the looks of it that things are very easy, I wouldn't say that it's going to be only a week to join UPS, because we will have to understand each facility's requirements and scope out what would be needed to join UPS. So I will put the detail in the chat that I shared with Connie and Jackie just a minute ago. It's very high level. This is not by any means everything that we have to do, but just gives you a bit of a concept of what we're looking at, identifying the facility, looking at what the requirements would be for the facility and how closely they would currently align with what the core configuration is or the functionality of UPS is currently. And then we would hold scoping calls with the vendor that is supporting the UPS, which is CRI Advantage. We would need to set up some scoping calls to verify the facility process and who the SMEs are from the facility that can help us identify the requirements, and especially APIs and data structure. So I did post that in the chat. Hopefully that's helpful.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you very much, Lisa. That is some great detail there. Let me mention another question that Ed had in the chat. He was curious. Let me bring this up here. And it was while looking at the screen actually that you had there previously, Connie. He was asking, how would it handle a situation where resources being requested are not experiment time requests? Is that part configurable to have a different header? Or is that almost the presumption that it's
like it's not an experiment, it's more of a access to a tool or computing
or
time,
just like experimental resource request or something like that?
Yeah, that question would be better answered by CRI Paul or Jackie. Do you have any sense about, similar to, APS's, particular question here? Do we have any sense about what kind of configurability we might have on the label for this, this section of the proposal form, facility to facility? I don't know how to answer that, unfortunately. I apologize.
Yeah, Connie, I wrote a quick response to Ed in the chat, but yeah, so I mean, this is definitely something that we can revisit, and I think we've already realized we probably need to. So when we started building this system, obviously we were looking specifically at 3 light source facilities, and we all operate in this environment where people ask for beam time and they request shifts, and in hindsight, I think choosing experiment time request has kind of limited as a label, it's very limiting because it assumes time. So I think we could easily change that label universally to become something that's more general, whether it's a resource request or a experiment request or whatever the label would become. But one other thing that we've done, if Connie, if you want to click on the add new request as an example. So within this form itself, there's the fields that specify how many shifts people are requesting, the minimum useful shifts, that kind of thing. And what we've already built is the ability for facilities to customize what that's called. Instead of it being shifts, it still has to be something quantifiable. It's still a number field. But that can be something that's defined by the facility. So in the case
hours
of
or blocks,
MeV-UED, it's hours, and exactly. But I think that configuration is something that we probably want to expand over time to cover other labels in the system. Because ultimately, if this is going to be much more universal, those labels should be configurable almost across the board.
Yeah.
With that said, making that change was not crazy hard, and has given us a lot more flexibility already. So it's definitely something that could be done. I think it's just one of those enhancements we would put in the queue and prioritize as a team.
Yeah, and again, even though this is in air quotes form and is universal, as Paul mentioned, there's flexibility here. You can point to different data tables, and only APS allows users to enter a second choice. So if you were submitting a user proposal for NSLS-II, this whole section wouldn't even show up. So there is some flexibility and some configurability available, even in these sections that are, so-called universal.
And just to add to that, Connie had mentioned earlier on the proposal form page, the APS built in the PRP question. And that's something now, as we've gone through, that we've learned we should create an enhancement to make this more of a configurable option to allow people to either have this functionality built in here or not. So something that you can turn on or off depending on your facility. And so it's kind of like a lessons learned as we're going, we're realizing, we're going to have to make a change here. Let's put this enhancement through to make this change, and then we can prioritize it as a team together to determine that priority of when we need this change to be made. Go ahead, Paul. I feel like you're going to.
Yeah, I was just going to sort of piggyback on that, because this is a great example of where we've made some decisions that make sense to us as three facilities. And then as we've taken a step back and looked at those decisions with more of a kind of a bigger picture eye, we've realized that they're not necessarily as universal as for everyone else as they are for us. And that's been an ongoing process throughout the entire project, has been trying to find that compromise, that balance between obviously a lot of the development is more complicated if we make things sort of infinitely configurable. So we're trying to find that sweet spot where we make things configurable enough that they are, as universal as possible, but not so configurable that the development is, infinitely onerous, if that makes sense.
All right. Actually, I like that. Might be a good theme to finish up our meeting on, while we can also schedule a further. I have a feeling that many of the questions that came up could get into the weeds of the capacity for different types of integrations and how to build the platform further. But for today, thank you all for taking the time, Paul, Connie, and Jackie, to present and answer these questions, and for everyone else to take some time to learn a little bit more about this and prompt these really getting into the weeds kind of usage questions. This is just the sort of conversation we wanted to continue on following the presentation in May. I will be sending to everyone who RSVP'd for this a link to this video meeting when we post it on our YouTube page. It just should happen in the next day. And then it will also be something that's shareable as a link through our website and all. If people would like to stay on for a little bit longer and ask a couple of questions, I can leave this all open, but more formally, we can say thank you for this hour that you gave us on the Universal Proposal System, and we can arrange another conversation born of people's interests. We can, and also our presenters' schedules and their availability. But thank you all for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thanks, Dan, for the opportunity to present this. If there's interest in looking at the back end, Jackie and Paul could give a tour de force on the administrative side of things. It's quite a system. So.
All right, great.
Yeah, thanks for organizing us all, Dan. I know we're always a herd of cats that you have to try and pull together.
Yes, it is a little convenient when people don't have to get on planes. So that's helpful. I'm going to pause this now, but we could leave this here if there's any other informal catching up or questions that come in. Thank you, everyone.